is really tough if they don't own anything and you can't get at their stuff. Well, you're going to become a tenant tonight because you're going to be in a position of not having anything in your name. Come on, don't spell my name wrong. Come on, sue me good because I don't own anything. Now, that's where that unique thing, that benefit of a land trust being personal property interests. That's a key factor right here, personal property interests. You have only an interest in the avails and proceeds which may flow from the trust. You do not have an interest in the real estate. The trust owns the real estate. You only have an interest in the renderings, the leftovers, what comes out of it. How many of you like this so far? Is this a beautiful thing? Now, it gets better. So, now let's say we have a second house, and we do the same thing, but with different names. And we have a third house, and we do the same thing. Now, we're going to redo our paperwork with our tenants. Because you sold the property, right? You don't own it anymore. So now in walks my brand new standard rental agreement, loaded with profit centers and protection. Honed beautifully over the last 35 years of my being in this business, baby. And it's a good thing. I mean, it's the best. We have profit centers built in, such as pet fees, pet rent, extra person rent, payroll deduction. How many of you would love to get your rent from payroll deduction? Would that be a good thing? They don't even see the money. The IRS figured this out years ago. Voluntary system. Don't let them, they ain't gonna volunteer. If we take the money before they ever see it, they have to volunteer in to get their money back. It's a pretty cool program. So you go, okay, so how can I sign on? How can I do that? By creating payroll deduction. Now let me ask you again, how many of you would love to get your rent by payroll deduction and not have them write a check? How many of you would like that? Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? So I've got a very unique rental agreement. Anyway, what happens is that once the tenant now, I have a letter in here that you're going to notify your tenants. You're going to notify your tenants that you no longer own the property. In fact, it says, I no longer own the property because of people like you. No, it doesn't say that. It says I no longer own the property. However, I'm going to remain on as the manager for an indefinite period of time. The new owners have some new paperwork they want me to go over with you. And that's how you can reset the whole relationship. How many of you ever lost control of a relationship with a tenant? Where they kind of like started taking advantage of you and they started setting you back and paying you later and all of a sudden you've lost control. Here's your opportunity to reset the clock. You're not the owner anymore. Somebody else owns it. You answer to a board of trustees. Whatever the board of trustees says. I'm going to lose my job. This is real stuff, baby. This works. Now, so we reset the relationship with the tenants. They now begin paying the rents to you as agent. To you as agent. Now, you take that money and you deposit it into you as trustees' bank account. So just as I was saying earlier, we're going to use this personal property trust to open the trust bank account with. Now, once we, by the way, it's in here. I got the whole layout for you in the system. So you'll be able to follow along as you create the paperwork and understand exactly how this strategy works. And it works like a charm, baby. So now what happens is all the money, all the money gets deposited into you as trustees' bank account. Now, you write all the checks. You write them to your property taxes, insurance, contractors, whomever you got to write a check to, you write it right out of that check. Now the next question is, who's the beneficiary of the trust? Now, here's where some interesting opportunities enter, because it could be a corporation or an LLC or a limited partnership, or it could be a living trust. Whomever the beneficiary is, that's who gets the check. So if, after you pay all the bills now, after you pay all the bills, that final check, that net check, that profit check, goes to the beneficiary. Now, if you're the beneficiary, you could just leave the money in the bank and write your own bills right out of there. No different than a property management company does, right? They collect all the rents, they pay the bills, and they write a net check to the owner. You'll be doing exactly the same thing. You're going to manage your own properties. Okay? All right, so now ultimate strategy is we will have, whether it's fixers or whether it's keepers, we've got a plan. Now these, whether it's flipper income or rent income, it's all going to get deposited to the bank account. Now, LLCs, corporations, that's an optional segment, and then the final beneficiary is the living trust. So we're going to have the money paid to the beneficiaries. If it's an LLC or corporation, that's who gets the money. If you are the beneficiary, then you can just leave your money right there. How many of you love this plan? Oh, it's a beautiful thing. I have all of my students on this plan. All right. So again, whether it is a land development, whether it is a real estate of any kind, you can hold it into trust. All right. Oh, get ready. This is a biggie. This is a biggie you can't get from anywhere else. And I don't care what it is, you can't get this except for here. Probate avoidance. Now, what is probate? This is the process by which the court system takes the assets from the cold, dead hand of the person that died, peels back the fingers, takes it, and gives it to the rightful living heir or heirs, right? A thing called a will assures that there will be probate, assures that there will be judges, there will be attorneys, there will be delay, there will be costs. A thing called a trust avoids the whole thing. Avoids the whole thing. Why? Because you've already said inside the trust document who gets what, under what circumstances. No need for a judge. No need for an attorney. No need for any delay whatsoever. So what I teach you to do is you make yourself the primary beneficiary, and then you make your children, others, whomever, successor beneficiaries. And what happens is, at your death, the instant of your death, it instantly goes to whoever's next, without any court. It's called operation of law. By operation of law, it immediately passes. And because of the fact that you didn't make yourself the trustee, you made someone else the trustee, it's their duty, it's their responsibility, it's their fiduciary responsibility to pass that asset on to the rightful living heirs. How many of you love that plan? Now here I want you to think about your parents. If you have living parents and they have assets, and I'm talking about vehicles, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, bank accounts, CDs, CDs, mobile homes, motor homes, gun collections, coin collections, anything in their lives can be placed in these individual trusts. Now, here's what really, okay, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Since we're talking probate, I'm not quite sure how this works, but I know the government can come back and collect on Medi-Cal.
They certainly can. Here's how it works. 5-year look-back period. Let's start now. Because if you go ahead and get it transferred and there's no ownership interest in the property, however, there's occupancy interest, then they only have an occupancy interest in the property. They don't own it anymore. So after you get past enough time, that 5-year look-back period, it's over. It's owned by the other party. Okay? Is that a beautiful?
It is.
Yes.
How do these programs, how are they administrated? By the people who are listed as the successors? How do they know how to do this?
Because you're going to leave the magic roadmap, and it's called the Land Trust Creation Information Worksheet.
Okay.
And so they're going to find that in the drawer, and all of a sudden it's going to spell everything out in that one document. And guess where? Right here. It's a beautiful thing. All right. So now let's think about what happens when life happens, right? So this is Judy Garianti. I purchased a whole enchilada at the La Grande Boot Camp in Las Vegas, started using it a couple of weeks later. It's been great. I discussed estate planning with my parents, and they told me they had a living trust, so we decided to create land trusts for their property. Long and short of it, I asked to see their deeds and living trust. I am the only heir, and they had a living will only. Now, what's a living will? You know what a living will is? That's the machine. Do you want the machine to keep going or not? You know, the machine. They didn't have a living trust at all. They had a living will that tells the doctors whether to cut the machine off or not, so that the children don't have to make the decision to cut the machine off. They've already decided that. Cut the machine off. You know, if I'm not functioning anymore, cut the machine off. So what happened was, she says, I spent that night creating the documents, living trust, etc., and they signed the documents the next day, and I walked them to the recorder's office. I didn't sleep well that night knowing the situation. They are 78 and 80 years of age, and things happen. She was afraid they're going to croak over that night before she actually got the stuff done. The whole enchilada has saved us many hours of grief. Losing a parent will be difficult, but probate will only add to the problem. It was wonderful having the CD to quickly prepare the documents. Is that a beautiful thing? Give her a hand.
Yeah.
That's great. So now you think about, so what Judy did was she took the thing home, the same thing. She went home and she actually opened up the documents, and she was able to create in one night all the documents for all of her parents' properties and get them recorded the next day at the courthouse. Is that a good thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's a happy camper because of that. Yes?
Does this work for IRA-owned properties?
Yes. Here's how it works. The IRA owns the property. There's no privacy there, is there? It's your name, IRA, the custodian for the benefit of you, right? No privacy. Here's what they will allow you to do. Now, they don't advertise this unless you ask. So you have to ask. Say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deed the property out of the IRA name into the trust name. And you make the IRA the beneficiary. It's that simple. So now you've created the privacy, you've created the asset protection because you've separated this asset from all your other assets, separated, segregated it out, and now the IRA is the beneficiary. And that's not, and that's not published anywhere on public record. Is that a beautiful thing? Yes. Gorgeous. Oh, by the way, I am the one who brought, anybody ever heard of equity trust?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm the one who brought Dick Desich into the real estate arena in 1990. I made a big mistake that day. I did not cut myself in on it. Now they got 530 employees. They're huge. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. I didn't cut myself in on it. Anyway, this is Dick Desich approved because I said the same thing to Dick. I said, wait a minute. Why can we not just go ahead and hold title and trust and have the IRA be the beneficiary? I don't know about that. I said, go check it out. So he goes and checks it out. And sure enough, he comes back to me and says, Lou, absolutely, there's no problem with that at all. And so you call up Trust ETC or Equity Trust tomorrow, and they'll tell you yes, you can. So, old money, new money. Whatever kind of money you got, it'll work. All right. So will this work here? Well, yes, it'll work here. In fact, here's an example. I bought the whole enchilada at one of your seminars several months ago when you were in the Philadelphia area, read it from cover to cover. Sorry to report, I love the whole enchilada. He fell in love. He said, you asked your students to keep in touch. I wanted to say that I'm so glad a friend of mine told me to get your course. I was afraid to spend that much money, but as I say, one deal can pay for good course material. One of the things you said is sometimes you have to be a pioneer to bring in concepts that work elsewhere, but not in your areas yet. I did, and now everyone wants to know how I did it. To give you the details, I took out subject to. Now this is another concept I'm going to be teaching you. To be able to take over the existing financing on property, you can do it with a trust.
What?
What did he just say?
Yeah.
You can take over property just like I did when I bought my first property, taking over the existing financing. And what I've done ever since then, all these years without going to banks and qualifying for loans, you can do it with a trust. And it's legal, and it's in the law that you can do it. So I'll show that to you. So he says he bought